sort of bombarding you with names. There's so many different artists, and I know that it's difficult for people who have never heard of these people, these artists before, to then remember which one's which. But I hope that we're sort of reading the catalogue and getting to know the show, you'll start noticing how different they are. One of the things about it's every time, you know, when you don't know something, when you don't know a type of music, you don't know a type of painting, you then tend to think, oh, it all sounds the same, it all looks the same. And when you look at Dutch Italianates, there is this tendency that, oh God, they all look the same. How do you tell which one's which? But I hope that, you know, we're spending time in the show, you'll kind of get a sense of how different they are. Jan Both is another one who went to Italy and was very much part of the circle of very kind of, let's say, rude young men around the Spanish steps. But he was the one that, in a way, managed to interact with other patrons and with other artists in Italy, and he worked very closely with some of them. And Both was part of this great enterprise in the 1640s and 50s for the King of Spain. Now, the King of Spain, Philip IV, had just built a new residence in Madrid, which was known as the Palace of the Buen Retiro, and he was very interested in landscapes. And so he commissioned all of the great landscape artists in Rome from the time to paint large canvases of landscapes with hermits in it. The Buen Retiro means the sort of good hermitage, the good retirement place. And the idea was that, you know, this was a small residence for the king to enjoy life. I mean, of course, small meant absolutely vast and huge. But there were fake hermits' caves in the gardens, and he had a long gallery with all these pictures of hermits and landscapes. And Both was one of the people who provided pictures for the Buen Retiro. And so again, you see here sort of peasants walking along a road, again along probably a river or a lake. But again, you start seeing that idea of light. The light coming in from behind the bush, and here's probably a sort of afternoon, evening light, this sort of wonderful glow. And that again is something that's very important for Dutch Italianates, is the warmth of the Italian sun and the light. I mean, Dutch light, of course, is much colder. It's kind of, it's a cooler sort of transparent light. Italian light is much more sort of incandescent and yellow. And there's this wonderful effect of warmth in landscape that they managed to create. The last picture on this wall introduces another artist, Dujardin. And Dujardin is one of the most interesting ones in a way, because he's the one that's more interested in the real day-to-day aspect of life. And here, in a way, it's not even a landscape at all. I mean, it's just a house somewhere in the Roman Campagna. And what you see again is two boys shoeing an ox. And if you think back to the first picture I showed you, the Birkham, you have this grand thing with ruins and countryside. Here you have even more of a day-to-day life. And I think that's why Dujardin is so interesting and so wonderful. And again, I mean, you can't as a large group, but try and get closer and look at the way in which the ox is painted. And there's this wonderful effect of a man, a blacksmith, inside the shop, hammering something behind the ox, and then the flames of the furnace from the window. And the way that the light is depicted again from this inside scene is absolutely wonderful. And then you get the shadow of the roof over the house and the light coming in from behind the wall and the smoke from the chimney. I mean, it's just so wonderfully observed. And this is one of the things I think when you're showing people around this sort of exhibition, the wonderful thing is the details, spot the details, and that's what people love. And kids love these pictures because there's so many animals and lots of things going on in them, and you can kind of look at them and spot what's going on. Let's move back over here.
Excuse me, did you say that there was a Swar picture?
Yeah, but it's not in our collection. It's, well, we don't know what's happened to it.
It's,
we only have the
one
engravings.
that was used for that?
Yeah, that's the one.
This one
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
And it could be,
Okay.
I mean, it looks darker than the other one, but it's
not
quite.
called Swar.
No. It used to be called Swar, but it's not anymore. I mean, it's a mistake.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Oh, no kidding. I can't even get up. I wrote blue notes. Yeah, see, I thought, and I've got.
It's cold. That's, I mean, light is one of the most difficult things to paint, obviously.
clouds.
Excuse me.
Clouds.
I have a problem with clouds.
On this wall, I just want to show you two things very quickly. First of all, an artist that paints in a Dutch style altogether, and the reason he's in the show is just to show you that difference. So the two little landscapes by Vinans show you Dutch typical landscapes again, and so what you see is the kind of cloudy skies of Holland, and what you're looking at are sort of sandy dunes on the coast of Holland. The other thing is the difference between this picture here and the one on the other side. And what you're looking at here is one of the pictures we have by Abraham van Calret. Now, Abraham van Calret is obviously a Dutch artist, but he's one of the ones that doesn't go to Italy. And he is a pupil of Cuyp, who's the famous artist, famous Dutch Italianate, that we'll see in a second. And one of the problems we had was that when I mentioned the collection was in the house, the large library only had Cuyp pictures in them. Now, about 6 or 7 of them are in fact by Cuyp, and we have them all here in the show. Another 10, 15 of them were either by followers or copies, or by Calret. And because Calret is so similar to Cuyp, and because he's Abraham Calret, AC, and the other one is Albert Cuyp, AC, they signed AC, both of them. So trying to work out which one's which took art historians a long time, and we now have a much clearer sense. I mean, this is definitely by Calret rather than Cuyp. But what you see here is, again, this wonderful effect of light and shade, probably in what Calret thought was Italian countryside. Of course, he'd never seen it, so he was just imagining it through other artists' eyes. But you have this, probably a groom, with 2 very grand, beautiful horses, saddled horses that are probably waiting for the masters to kind of come by and go for a ride in the countryside. So it's this wonderfully noble image of horses. Now, look at the picture on the other side of the wall.
Am I correct that horse is like really out of proportion?
Well, they're quite large, but it's not totally off. I mean, the man is
The head looks really small.
I mean, it's about making the horses as the focus of the painting rather than the man. I mean, the man is kind of behind and slightly sort of tucked away.
I just asked because I was reading something this morning about how, you know, you're mentioning a criticism later on. One of the criticisms I was reading where somebody was criticizing how the horses were very unrealistic.
Well, I mean, a lot of the animals are often mentioned as being unrealistic. I mean, when you go through them, I mean, you know, it's a vaguely unfair criticism because a lot of them are, you know, very accurate and well depicted.
Sure, I was just wondering.
No.
When you're painting or drawing or whatever, it's not going to be perfect. The only way it can be perfect is somebody taking a picture of it.
Sure. No. But
somebody
I think
painted it.
you also have a lot of